My name is Amir Siddiqui. I was born in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Grew up to Jain Hindu parents, and grew up in a household, I guess, that very nurturing. Right at the end of the day, it was parents were definitely people that looked up to what their kids were doing, brought them up in an environment to the best of their abilities. My dad is the eldest of 12 in his family, so the eldest male. So he was always the one taking on responsibility for his families, his brothers and his sisters, and he treated his family kind of the same way. Sometimes actually sacrificed his own family for his brothers and sisters' goods and kind of what they did. At the age of 4, moved to New York City, grew up in Flushing, Queens. And again, there we grew up in an environment that was, again, very nurturing from a family environment point of view. But again, being first generation in the Americas, living in an environment that you don't know the people around you, and you're kind of in a place where you are learning as well as your parents are learning. They're trying to get established. They're trying to get their foothold in what they're doing in life. It was challenging, right? We were not very well off. I would actually say we were below the midline, high end of poor, low end of middle, and we grew up right in the streets of New York City, of Flushing, Queens, and that was, alhamdulillah, for 12 years. So I started second grade there. Second grade. Started about kindergarten, first grade there, and then up to the age of 16, 17, 18. It's kind of like a regular childhood. You're going through your life, you're making your friends, you're kind of getting to know everybody around you. But then during that time frame, I also started, the community around you, it's very tight, right? So I met a lot of Indian friends, a lot of Pakistani friends, a lot of Bangladeshi friends. And we just started noticing during that 16, 17, 18-year-old time frame when kids' minds are curious. They want to know what's going on in life. Why am I doing something this way versus, kind of why are they doing it that way? And one of the families that were really close to us, the kids would always be at Sunday school for Islamic Sunday school, and we'd all be like, we just got through school 5 days a week. Why are you going to school again on a Sunday, right? Like we're outside playing. But then you start seeing their environment, you start seeing the way they act and behave, and that has a little bit of an influence on you. That wasn't the time when I kind of considered everything that I was going through and what I did. But then, alhamdulillah, I got accepted to go to college at West Virginia University. And when I went to West Virginia, it was just kind of more curiosity. You started thinking about what you're doing, why you're doing it, what's the purpose of life, right? Why was I born? What's the greater meaning of what I have to get accomplished in this world? And alhamdulillah, there I met one of the local imams who, again, it was probably, a 5x5 little mosque in the middle of Morgantown, West Virginia. And he kind of brought me in with the purpose of just kind of teaching me, right? Not really thinking I was going to convert. But then, alhamdulillah, I did. First freshman year of college, I converted. So back in 1986, I converted. And that's how I kind of started learning. And it just happened to be that it happened to be a Sunni mosque. It could have been a Shia mosque. It could have been a Wahhabi mosque. It could have been anything, just to learn kind of the concepts. And at that time, I didn't know there was a difference. Islam was Islam to me. Didn't know that there was all these sects and kind of what we did and how we got there. And then, alhamdulillah, from that time period on, I think we've just been learning about it, just been understanding what Islam is, why it is what it is. I think understanding the difference of growing up in an environment, for those of you out there in the community that know a lot of people in the Jain faith, they're Gujarati, very, very kind of, Jain is considered probably, if you think about the hierarchy in the Hindu religion, Jain is, close to the top. So very, very religious from a perspective of, everything that Islam teaches. It's kind of take care of yourself, don't lie, don't cheat, treat others like you want to be treated. They don't eat meat, they're vegetarian, so on and so forth. So if you really think about the upbringing that I had, yes, I didn't pray, yes, I didn't do X, Y, and Z, but also I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't eat meat. I didn't do all the things that you would consider kind of part of what you would consider anybody else that was thinking about converting, saying, wow, these are going to be tough. So actually, the reason I believe, alhamdulillah, that I am the Muslim that I am today and what I've done is because of my parents, right? They raised me in a way that allowed me to be a better Muslim. I just happened to have, Allah just provided me the light to kind of get to the path that I'm in now. So during college, I think very similar circumstances. I kind of learned on my own. I read books and again, at that time, there was no internet, there was no Amazon, none of those things where you could order books online. You read what you got. You read what was in the local masjid, and you talked to people, right? So again, no concept of what's the difference between a Sunni and a Shia and all the other sects that were out there. It was just learning the religion, which was the kind of the basics of what I was trying to get done. I probably, first couple of years still just praying namaz was with the book on the floor, because, when you kneel, you're kind of trying to read exactly what you have to say when you go into ruku and what you're going to do and how to make azan. And so it's kind of just like you're studying for a test or you're studying to be a doctor or a lawyer, you're kind of learning the basics of what your profession is going to be all about. I would say halfway through college, my parents found out that I had converted. Obviously, I think in all Asian cultures, it doesn't make a difference what religion you're a part of. When your parents find out you're doing something they don't want you to be doing, it becomes a massive, massive conversation. And it did. And I think still to this day, it's I would say it hasn't brought us closer, but it's closer than when we were back then, right? And from that day forward, you kind of learn to live your life through what you want to become in life, because they did what any parent would do, which was to say, if you're going to move forward in this path, we can't support you. We're not going to live by you. We're not going to help you. And the parents put you in a position to try to make you change your decisions. So whether it's smoking, drinking, doing this or doing that, my bad thing was becoming a Muslim, right? I guess they pressured me into a position where I had to go learn on my own. I had to go live with friends. I had to go make money on my own, and I had to go to school on my own, and I had to support myself. And alhamdulillah, that in a certain way, it makes you a much better person later in life. That time during your life, you definitely feel like I made the wrong decision. I'm putting myself in a really bad spot here. But alhamdulillah, since then, I mean, mashallah say, I've got 3 beautiful kids today, got married, and alhamdulillah, I've kind of taught them through the basics that I know of Islam. Allah Mia always provides a door for you when you think one door closes, another door opens up. So actually back then when my parents we went through this hard times, I met up with a friend who I went to high school with, just bumped into him at the mosque. And obviously he was surprised, saying, "What are you doing here at the mosque? Like, I know you, I grew up with you." His family actually took me in. So alhamdulillah, there were 4 brothers and a sister. They lived in Bayside, Queens, and pretty much I became the 5th brother, right? I was part of the family. I celebrated Eid with them. I was pretty much in their house every day, learning how a Muslim family lives together. And it's still different, right? It's still, you're not part of the family, but you are very, very part of the family, and you feel it inside, right? You don't show it outside. But I think this is where I saw for me, the brighter side of Islam, where people take you in. There's no reason this family had to take me in. There's no reason this family had to treat me like one of their own and teach me the religion specifically the way they knew the religion, right? So they happened to be Sunnis as well, right? Another just kind of chance in faith. It could have been anybody, right? And so I learned from them. I mean, to this day, they are my brothers. To this day, we call each other up every month. We talk about each other. They're still in New York, and they've the oldest brother. He's come down, and when all 3 of my sons were born, he's the one that came down and we shaved the head and we do all that stuff. He's come down and done all that. He's the one for 2 of them that read the azan in their ears, when they were born. So alhamdulillah, it's truly like my older brother and kind of what they've taught me through my life. I think as life has progressed, I've alhamdulillah, I married my wife Siddiqa, who at the time, again, I didn't know the differences between Sunni, Shia, and so on and so forth. But I met her at the family that I just mentioned. Youngest brother that I was the closest with, met her at his wedding, and since then we just kind of started talking. The families started talking, and the families kind of talked to each other and said, "Hey, what's going on? Who is he?" And I kind of asked about her to her uncle and aunt, and it kind of progressed to where we are in life now. And that's kind of when I started picking up on the differences, right? So the first time I actually probably understood the difference, that there was different sects, was actually in West Virginia when I was in college. The imam there, and maybe every Friday at the sermon, maybe there was 20 people in the room. I mean, that's how small the town was and how many Muslims there were from around the world in that little town. One of the sermons that he was talking about was one of the people in the community had converted to Shiism. And I didn't know what it was, right? I was just like, oh, maybe he did something bad, and they're talking about why it's okay to go do that, right? And I had no concept of it. But then after I got married, I met my wife's parents in Pakistan, her sisters, and then her cousins, and their in-laws, and alhamdulillah, I think that what I notice in a lot of the people that I meet is there's absolutely discrimination across the world. There's discrimination in every faith. There's discrimination in every religion. There's discrimination in every sect, right? They took me in as one of their own. They kind of knew about me, and they'd met me over the phone, but they'd never met me in person. She had come here for her studies and for work, and they happened to live in Pakistan, so we had never met face to face. So we got married through her uncle and aunt, and so on and so forth. But they took me in, and there was no concept of, well, you pray like this, or you talk like this, or you believe in this. It was just, what's your belief? And my belief was very simple. I believe in Islam. And a lot of people would ask me, well, what does that mean? And I would say, at the time of Rasulullah, did anybody ask what type of Islam you believe in? You believed in what Rasulullah taught. That's what I believed in. That's what I've learned. That's the books that I read, right? But then obviously after that, I started seeing the differences in, okay, what happened, after Rasulullah passed on, after, kind of the imamat was passed on, and started reading books like Then I Was Guided, which was probably my first book that I kind of realized, okay, there is some differences here, and it's logical. It's not, I don't think there's any perspective that you would look at to say that there was a political gain here or a financial gain here. It was all logical. It's based on the time, based on the fact, based on power, based on so many different things, and absolutely all those factors were probably into it. There was financial gain, there was political gain, there was what's the right thing to do by the community, so on and so forth. And to me, logically, again, I see Islam as a logical religion, right? There's nothing in Islam that you can debate and say that doesn't make sense. You can ask a lot of questions, but there's usually a very good answer associated with it. One of the reasons I kind of looked into Islam right from the beginning, and sorry I'm going back here a little bit, is because of that. Is because my parents absolutely pray. We have idols in our home, and they still live in the same home we grew up in. And you go to a temple, but it's the fact of what do those idols do, the stories you hear, the kind of reading their versions of what the Quran and the Bible and so on and so forth, and what they call the Bhagavad Gita, and understanding that some of those stories you kind of go, it sounds like a story. It doesn't sound like there's anything here. So that kind of sparks your interest. And Islam was all logic, right? There was no certain reason. Why do you pray? You pray to remember God. Okay, that makes sense, right? There's nothing you can kind of debate about that. There's a very simple reason behind it. Why is the month of Eid and what's the month of Ramadan for? To show sacrifice, to show what you have and how you're more blessed than other people in your lives. Okay, makes sense, right? I mean, it's all logical. There's nothing that somebody could say to you and go, oh, hey, this you have to believe this way. This you have to think about this way. Or, do angels exist? I had a tough time with that one, right? Because I was like, yeah, I can't really debate that. I can't see it. I don't see it for myself, right? But alhamdulillah, over time, that's faith, right? Faith is you either believe in something 100% whether you see it or not. And I think that's probably how I've matured as an individual, right? A lot of the things in the beginning, again, you think about it when you're 18, 19, 20, for all of you watching, everybody went through certain moments in their life, whether good, bad, or indifferent. And if you're today in your mid-40s like I am, you probably look back and you go, okay, yeah, that was, kind of a tough situation that I went through. Probably wouldn't make the same decision again that you made today. But alhamdulillah, I think that's what's helped mature me, kind of bring me to the perspective I'm at now, and help me learn all the different aspects of where I am today. So I would still consider myself learning. My kids, alhamdulillah, they absolutely, my two older sons were definitely brought up, quote unquote, in a Sunni household. We did everything one way. We prayed one way. We kind of acted one way. But my youngest one, alhamdulillah, he's 8 years old. He's probably as much a Shia as anybody else. He's gone to Shia schools starting from age 2. He goes to madrasa every Sunday. He knows the call to azan. He knows the differences. He knows why not. So in my family, that's the big difference. We go to Sunni masjids on Friday for Jummah namaz, but then on Jummah or on a Saturday or Sunday, we'll be at the madrasa praying with my Shia brothers. And alhamdulillah, I haven't seen, I phrase it a different way. What I've seen is just openness. What I've seen is people look at that aspect and they go, that's great that, you're kind of looking into certain aspects of your life and trying to deliver on different aspects of your life. And to me, there's that. That's the big difference that I've noticed is definitely the Shia community is a lot tighter community. And the reason I say that is because based on my experiences, we've lived in a whole bunch of different places in the Americas, in Atlanta, in New York City, Orlando a long time ago, now Orlando again. And we've moved around a lot because of the work that I'm in and what I wind up doing. What you'll find in the Sunni community is definitely Jummah namaz is the number one kind of thing where people get together and make it happen. Now that's different. I know in Texas and California, probably the Sunni, community is very tight. They actually have kids programs. They do different types of things. They get the community together. Where we wound up growing up and where my kids wound up growing up, the two older ones, we didn't have that. Friday was kind of your religious day, and that was really about it, right? What I definitely do notice about the Shia community and the different communities within the Shia community is definitely there's a tight pact, there's a tight group, right? I mean, literally every night, if it's not the kids, it's the adults, it's the ladies, they're getting together at the mehfil. There's a volleyball game going on, there's a softball game going on, there's a golf game going on, there's picnics, there's communities. I mean, so even though you're being brought up in a religion, you're being brought up in a community, which is something that we lacked, and I lacked in providing for my two older children that community, in making them successful. And inshallah, you know what, just like I learned, hopefully they'll learn and they'll pick these things up and become definitely 100 times better Muslim than I am. But I think that's one of the big differences that I've noticed in just all my endeavors, right? And all the people that I talk to and the family members and the relatives that I talk to. That's a big difference. And alhamdulillah, I'm very inquisitive, and probably people that know me know I'm not a shy person. I tend to speak out a lot and speak my mind. And alhamdulillah, I've asked a lot of questions of Sunni imams and Shia imams, and I'll tell you, at the end of the day, definitely the Shia imams are a lot more scholarly. And I generalize when I say that, but I've found it to be true. My personal experiences is that most of the Shia imams, they go through a study. It's like being a profession. It's not something you wound up doing because you couldn't do something else. You become an imam because you're like you're going to spend the next 6 years of your life in college, in universities, learning the language, learning the religion, learning the differences, learning kind of what your subject matter expertise is going to be. I didn't find that so much in my Sunni brothers and in the imams. They actually sometimes would not want to talk about why the differences are there. Obviously, there are imams that absolutely do talk about it, so it's not that it's a general statement, but the Shia imams definitely were more open. They definitely invited me in and call me anytime if you want to ask why this, why that, and they happen to know both sides of it very, very well, and definitely more educated in the religions overall. So I think that's always good. Anytime you're open and you're friendly, guess what? Even if your enemy's there, anytime you're open and you're friendly, they're going to see a different aspect to you, and they're going to want to learn more about that side of what's going on. And so, inshallah, today and for the last now 20 years of my life, approximately, that I've been learning Islam. It's still a journey, right? We're still trying to figure out what the next step is, what I have to learn, what the next thing I have to do is. Just little things, right? Reading the Quran. I haven't read the Quran in Arabic. I'm still learning Arabic, and I try to do my best, but I've read the Quran in English. And but that's another journey. That's another next step, is try to go figure out how to read it in Arabic and understand Arabic, right? Might be a little bit too much of a goal for me, but we'll go try it out, and we'll see inshallah what happens. Today, who I am versus who I would have been if I had not kind of accepted Islam, I would say personality-wise, I would probably be the same person. I like I said, I grew up in a household, and mostly what you learn is what you learn from your parents and your household, right? So I don't think I would be a different person. I think the biggest difference in my life and the biggest difference in my children's lives would have been the big difference. I wouldn't have the kids I have today. I wouldn't have the wife I have today. It's very simple. I would have been out there enjoying myself. I would have been out there doing different things that were more acceptable in the culture and in the religion. If you kind of really go by that path, and I think to this day I could still say that I haven't done anything that would make me think that I've kind of crossed what my parents have taught me, which is a tough thing. I think growing up and not having those, if I wouldn't have converted at the age of 17, 18 when I did in college would have been a different experience, and not for the right reasons, for the wrong reasons. And it's it's just, I think that would have changed my life, right? And I think, alhamdulillah, this was meant to be at the right time in the right place, because for multiple different reasons. And for those of you that live in the United States and know West Virginia University, at the time I went to West Virginia University, which was 86 and onward, it was the #1 party school in the United States. So if I wasn't who I was and I didn't learn the religion at that time and place, I wouldn't be who I am today. Yeah, probably have the same personality, but I definitely would have done a lot of things and transgressed from what's right versus what's wrong, and just have said to myself, it's okay. You can do that. It's a life. You live it, and you kind of do this and you do that, and it's okay. Everybody else does it, so you can do it as well. I think that's the one big difference I definitely notice in myself, and I think my kids will tell you, and my wife will tell you in me, is when I put my mind to something, and when I say this is going to happen, there's no roadblocks. And I think that's the biggest difference in who I am as a person, and what Islam has taught me is you got to believe and you got to have that faith, right? Every time a door is closed on me, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the world that have had worse challenges than I have. But when your parents say to you, no more money, you're out of the house. At 17, 18, there's not too many choices you have in this world. Guess what? Allah opened up a door for me, right? When that door opened up and I took advantage of it, and I worked, and I went to school full time, and I worked nighttime, I worked the night shift, I worked 12 midnight to 8 o'clock, I went to school in the daytime, I paid tuition myself, I took the train every day, every night going to work and school. That wouldn't have been me. I would have had a luxurious life in the realm of what my parents could have afforded. But given that, it made me who I am today. I strive, I work harder, I definitely push myself, I push my kids sometimes, probably a little bit too much, to try to get them to understand that what they have, alhamdulillah, is 20 times better than what I had growing up. And I would say, socially, that's probably the one biggest difference. Financially, alhamdulillah, I couldn't tell you. I mean, I definitely believe that, it's just like Allah says. Allah's pre-written all this, right? Allah knew before I was born that I was going to go do this, and I was going to go make this happen. So I definitely have that faith that if it wasn't at the age of 18, whether it was at the age of 20 or 22, I was destined to do something different and change my life and become who I am today. And for me, it's really, really different. I mean, this is the first of my generation in this world, bar none. It doesn't make a difference, right? That's it. This is where my name starts, and this is where my name continues to flow on. And before me, nobody had this name in my lineage. So you kind of think about that, and again, I don't equate myself to any of the people who have converted Islam in prior lives and generations, because I'm nowhere near them. But you think about all the generations today, right, that have, starting from the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to today, all the people that have converted. Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. And you think about that and you go, okay, there's something to be proud of, right? From a perspective of you're making a difference in the world. And I hope that difference is, just like my parents taught me and my kids will learn, is, it's just about doing the right thing in this world, right? I think Islam just confirmed that for me 10 times more, which is do what's right, treat your neighbors like you want to be treated, treat other people like you want to be treated. Don't discriminate, don't segregate. And as much as I think sometimes we as Muslims, we as Asians, we as this community tend to look outward, sometimes we have to look inward and say, sometimes it's ourselves, it's not others that do this to us. So there's I philosophically can have this conversation for hours about what the differences are, but I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I've noticed in me. On the negative side or the challenging side, yeah, my relationship with my parents is still bad. I'm probably not the best Muslim when it comes to treating your parents the right way. I know I'm not the best Muslim when it comes to treating your parents the right way, just because it is tough. It is tough for me to abide by my religion, but still focus on what makes them happy, focus on doing what they think is right. There's always a debate, there's always an argument. There always will be, because they have a totally different point of view on what I should be doing with my kids and my life and my sons and so on and so forth. Food and where to go and what to do and how to meet people and having girlfriends and not having girlfriends, and it's okay and this and that. That's just going to continue. And inshallah, Allah will forgive me for, I hope, for those actions. But that's been the tough part, right? So my relationship with my parents isn't as strong as most people, I guess any person in this world would like it to be. My relationship with my sister is not as strong because of that, because of the challenges she had to go through when I converted, and the challenges we had in our family, right? So it's just, that's the difficult part of it, but alhamdulillah, I definitely do believe that the journey is going to help. I definitely do believe that in the faith in the hereafters, I'm hoping Allah will, inshallah, forgive me for those sins with a little bit of the good stuff that I do on the other side. So alhamdulillah, I think the relationship with just the overall community has been really great. So obviously my wife, her cousins, her family are absolutely 100%, 110% practicing Shias. And so what it's brought me is, one, the openness, right? And as I mentioned earlier, knowing who I was, knowing that I had kind of, quote unquote, converted to Islam, this was a family, this was a community that accepted me for who I was. They didn't say, yes, you could marry my daughter if you became a Shia, right? They said, yes, you can marry my daughter as long as you're a Muslim, right? And I think that aspect of that openness and that aspect of that allows me to kind of be who I am today. And then, on a daily basis, like you said, now, her cousins and her family, they all live here in the Orlando area, majority of them. Alhamdulillah, I've had the pleasure of getting to know her family in Canada and in Pakistan and India and everywhere else. And I think that provides me that aspect, and each one of them knowing that, when I come to the mehfil, I'm coming for a different reason. When my sons come to the mehfil, they're coming for a different reason. But we're not judged on that. We're not judged on that certain aspect, right? Here in Orlando, I happen to play golf with a whole bunch of guys that are also from the same community, and I'm not judged by who I am, right? I'm judged by the person. I'm judged by the ability. At least I would like to think so in my golf game. But I think it inspires me, right? It inspires me to know that. Yes, and I'll say this again, that yes, there is discrimination. I absolutely do believe there is discrimination internally within the communities. And that it's not because it's an internal discrimination, it's because we've grown up in our own little cultures, right? If you happen to be kind of from this culture, you think a different way, you act a different way, you get married, you have these different culture things that you do. And if you're from this culture, you're still part of the Ahlulbayt, but you're doing it a different way. And so there's a little bit of different thought. And if you're from Syria, you're doing it this way. If you're from Iran, you're doing it this way. And I think that inspires me as a person who's kind of seen it from the outside and who sees it from the inside, to be able to try to make a change, right? And inshallah, the more I learn and the more knowledgeable I can become, hopefully that is something that I can enable to bring change to as well. But alhamdulillah, I think the openness, I think the aspect of the educated imams, I think the aspect of the khutbahs that happen and the lectures that happen, probably every Jummah, every weekend, where we're talking about different aspects, right? The imams come and they talk openly about things that are impacting our youth, openly about things that are impacting the adults, openly about things that are impacting the world. And I think that's what you need. You need those intellectual professionals to come and educate us and educate the world about children, right? Growing up in the Americas, our kids are going to go through a different life than I grew up in. I mean, I'm a first generation person, came here when I was 4 years old, but we were first generation. All the people I grew up with were first generation. We did not dare do half the things that probably the kids do today, just because it's a little easier, right? And the imams talk about that, right? They get these kids in a room and talk about girlfriends and drugs and peer pressure and the kind of situations they get put in. They bring the parents in and they talk about, hey, when you're raising these kids, it is different. It's not like when you were raising them in India, Pakistan, or Africa, or anywhere else in the world. There's a different aspect here. There's more openness here. So I think that aspect is tremendous. I think the time and effort for all the people that volunteer, in Sunday schools, in all these events that they put together, nobody has to do this, right? They do it out of their love for their religion. They do it out of their love for their kids and their community. And I think the more and more you get of that across the board, I think the more and more open you'll find that other people will be to coming to Islam in general, right? And then it's a matter of, honestly, it's a matter of luck. It's a matter of what person Allah presents you to meet with on that day and time when you're thinking about, hey, I want to look into a different religion. If you happen to be like me, for whatever reason, Allah chose me to go through the path of, the path that I've gone through. But I can probably say I probably know more, and when I say more, I'll put that in quotes, more about Sunni and Shia and Wahhabism, because I've had to learn all three to understand the differences. And I don't know if that's true for a person born directly into a Sunni family, a person born directly into a Shia family, a person born directly into a Wahhabi family, because they don't have to put that thought and effort into it. They're basically like, I know what I'm learning. My parents have told me it's the right thing. My brothers have told me it's the right thing, whatever. So there's a reason. I don't know what that reason is yet. Inshallah, one day I'll kind of figure it out for myself, and I'll know, what my purpose was and what the journey was all about. But alhamdulillah, till that day, I think the people that I've run into, alhamdulillah, the doors that Allah's opened for me, the religious aspects of the emotion and the passion that I find across the board in the Ahlulbayt, I mean, I would say attracts me more and challenges me more mentally to be able to say why, right? And the more times I say why to myself, the more books I open up, the more things I read about, the more things I debate about to say, yeah, I understand this, but this doesn't make any sense. And then obviously there's a good debate that occurs, and you kind of go, okay, maybe I can understand that aspect of it, right? So I think the open conversation, the open debate is one that in this world is necessary, and I find that a lot more within the Ahlulbayt community, right? As I mentioned before, just because the knowledge comes from a different aspect. The knowledge doesn't come from, here's what I learned when I was growing up. The knowledge comes from, I went to this university, I spent 6 years there studying Islam, the different aspects of Islam, and understanding why this happens and that happens. So to me, I think that's probably the greatest aspect of where we are today, where I am today in my life, in learning more about the Ahlulbayt and hopefully taking that journey a step closer, towards the end. How Imam Hussein and kind of the impact of Karbala and how that kind of impacts me and what I go through, and emotionally how I deal with that. I think if there's one sacrifice in this world, it doesn't make a difference who you are, as long as you're a Muslim. That sacrifice enabled us to get to where we are today as Muslims in general. It doesn't make a difference what you believe in. If you're a Muslim, it doesn't make a difference what sect you're in, doesn't make a difference what your beliefs and your thoughts are. That was the sacrifice that enabled Islam to move forward. Now, if you take that and you add on to it the descriptions, the emotional sacrifices, the physical sacrifices, the mental sacrifices that at that time and place the family of Imam Ali had to make, and the kids, what they had to go through. I think it's just like anything else. I think there's not a single person in this world who can see and sit back and watch their family kind of get massacred in the way that happened. So emotionally, absolutely, it's a draining emotion. It's one that you kind of sit back and you say to yourself, in that time, in that place, knowing that is what they were going up against, could we as individuals really step up and go, I know exactly what I'm walking into, right? I'm walking into a massacre. I know my family's going to get massacred tomorrow. I know they're going to be embarrassed tomorrow. I know they're going to be put in front of a test tomorrow. Could I do that? Those are the kind of emotions that I deal with, and when I think about kind of Karbala and I think about the actions that happened there, and again, Muslims on Muslims. So we talk about individually, kind of where these things go. That is a tough emotion. That is a tough reaction to kind of take in. But I think the more and more I learn about it, I got to be honest with you. I mean, I wasn't educated about this in the beginning. We would go to during the month of Muharram, we would go to the Mehfil, and I would see kind of all the things going on and the physical aspects of what was going on in the morning. I didn't understand it, and to me, I think, alhamdulillah, I would say probably over the last 5-6 years, I think speaking more and more to the imams about that, what happened there, why it was critical, what the reasoning for it was. Historically, I didn't understand it either. So just historically becoming more aware of why it happened. I think that's the one thing absolutely I walk away from is, again, it doesn't make a difference who you are in this world. It doesn't make a difference what seat you're on and what group you're a part of. If you're a Muslim, you wouldn't be a Muslim today if that sacrifice hadn't taken place, because Islam, as we know it, the true religion, the kind of the cleansed religion, it would have been tainted. It would have gone different directions. It would have been pushed out. And I think just like you see in other parts of the organizations, there's always a kind of a balance. I think that sacrifice created that balance and put Islam back on the right path.